Okay, so welcome back to the third session of connectivity. Hope you enjoyed the previous two sessions and understood the basic concept to be followed to interface Python with MySQL. Okay, now today we are going to learn how to fetch records, probably all the records, probably one record or limited set of records. Whatsoever may be the case, we are going to use various functions. Okay. So to understand the concept, let's proceed with a simple example. Consider this table student having three columns: admission number, name and score. Okay, the admission number is taken as a primary key. Fine. So look at the first question. Write a program to display all records from the table student who scored above 90. Okay. To get all the records from the table student, the query will be, yes, select star from student where score greater than 90. On execution of this query, you will have all the records from the cursor object. You can simply iterate the cursor object and see entire set of records who scored above 90. So in this case, probably the Binu and Harish is going to get 90 above. Okay, that was so simple. Now let us jump to the next question. What is this? Write a program to enter an admission number and display the student detail. An admission number has to be inputted and that record has to be shown. How many records might have been fetched? Exactly one. Admission number being primary key, there would be only one record. Yes. So now to print this one record, will you be requiring a for loop? Not necessarily, because for loop is preferred to iterate multiple records. So that's something to contemplate here, how to print a single record by avoiding the for loop. Yes. Now third question goes, fetch the top 3 students from this table student who would qualify to get a scholarship. Okay, top 3 students. I will be definitely sorting this table in descending order of score so that the toppers will be coming at the top level. Okay, so when you're sorting, you need the query select star from students order by score DESC. On execution of this query, I'll be getting all the records sorted in descending order of score. So if I'm going to print that cursor object, it's going to show 7 records. Yes, and I need only top 3 student. Great. Now what should I do now? So now you got an idea that in question number 1, we were supposed to fetch all the records and then print it. In question number 2, we had to extract only one record and I want to print it without an iteration. That is without a for loop. Fine. Now question number 3 demanded, I don't want the entire set of 7 records. I want to take only the top 3 records and print it. Okay, so in this session, we are going to discuss how to take selective records from the cursor object and print it. Fine. For that, we are going to have few functions like fetch one, fetch all, fetch many, and the last one is going to be an attribute row count. Now let's proceed. Fetch all. This function fetch all is going to retrieve all the records from the cursor object, and all the records from the cursor object will be returned in the form of a list. Fine. The second function fetch one is going to fetch only single record from the cursor object. Fine. And that record will be in the form of a tuple. So this will be a list, this will be a tuple. Now the third one is going to fetch many object. Many in the sense n. You have to give n. If n is 3, so that means it is going to fetch 3 records from the cursor object. And of course, this one also returns a list. Fine, let's proceed. Now in this case, you can see the connection is done. The cursor object is ready and my query is ready to get executed. And what is the query? Select star from student. And on execution of this query, I'm using fetch all function. Okay, so I'm using the fetch all function to fetch all the records from the cursor object and I'm putting it in a variable rs. What I'm going to have if I'm printing rs? Here goes the output. On printing rs, you can see there is all records turning up, and that too in the form of a list. Fine. So fetch all returns all the records in the form of a list. Okay, this one seems little bit messed up and clumsy because I cannot make out the records from each other. So what I can do is a little bit of iteration in the rs. So here goes the for loop. The rs needs an iteration. For I in rs print I. Fine. So now you can see each and every record is turning up probably in a neat manner. Fine. Okay. So next one is the fetch one. So again, the connection is ready, cursor is ready. Let's execute the query. Select star from student, cursor object executes the query, and from the cursor object I am fetching one record. So it reads only the first record. Therefore, if I'm going to print rs here, you can see how many records? Rs has only one record, and that too in the form of a tuple. It's not a list. Now the last function, fetch many. Fetch many n. N stands for the number of records I want to fetch from the cursor. So again, the query remains the same. I'm executing the query. The cursor object is ready. And from the cursor object, I am fetching how many records? 3. So it's fetch many 3. And you can see on printing rs, what did I get? Yes, a list with only 3 records, top 3 records from the cursor object. Okay, so that was the 3 function. Let's move ahead with the last attribute, that is the row count. Now row count is again returning the number of records fetched. So it will be an integer, 1, 2, 3, whatever. The number of records fetched in cursor object. If it is 0, that means I didn't get any record from the cursor. Fine. So you should always remember row count is to be associated with the cursor object which is fetched. So cursor need to either take fetch many, fetch all, or fetch one. And after doing the fetching only, you are going to take the row count. Fine. Let's see through an example here. I have made a slight change in the query. Select star from student where score is greater than 90. So this can be associated with your question number 1. Okay, so those students who got above 90, I'm taking that and I'm executing the query and fetching all the records. So it will be fetching all the records, all the students who got above 90. Fine. When you're taking the row count from the cursor object, again see the cursor object is taken and row count is taken. And X is the row count, the number of students who got above 90. It will be stored in X. Now I have put a simple condition. If X is 0, that means no student got above 90. Whereas else part I'm printing number of students who obtained above 90 is X. Fine. So RS is also printed because if I want to know the details, who were those kids who were scoring above 90, I can also extract the data from there. So what happens here on execution? You can see there were 2 students. Here goes the 2 students. The number of students who obtained above 90 is 2. And this is RS. Print RS is printing 2 records. One is Binu and Harish. And see, it's in the form of a list. So fetch all is always giving you a list. Row count will be returning an integer which specifies how many records are there in the cursor object. Fine. So that was the end of today's session. It's time to practice. Hands-on experience is very important. So first question is already been discussed. Now come to the question number 2. Okay, this will be followed in the next video. And by the third one is of course another conceptual building exercise that I'm giving to you. And it is already been discussed. So you can just use appropriate statement, appropriate fetch, and row count or whatever you want to do, you can do, and experiment with all the functions and the attribute row count. So what are we waiting for? Grab your computer, start practicing. Happy coding. Thank you.